Because we had a high-profile celebrity that recently had his estate had to go through a probate situation. The guy
Yes.
from I always messed up his name, Chad.
Chadwick Boseman.
Yes.
Yes.
So a situation like that, because we always think that the celebrities and the rich people have
They're
it
immune
figured
from
out,
it.
right?
Right.
How can you break down his situation? Because you broke it down perfectly when you did your
My podcast.
your podcast on it.
So, yeah, I spoke about it a few times, and I guess I'll give the iteration that I remember. So what happened with Chadwick is allegedly he did not have a trust or a will, right? And so because he did not have a trust or will, his estate had to go through the courts. Now, when you don't have a will, it's not called probate; it's an administration process, right? The estate needs to be administered. That's how it's kind of explained. So, but it's a similar process. Essentially, you got to go to court, file paperwork to basically say, hey, we are the loved ones that are around, and we're the ones who should benefit from the estate. So we want the court to make that happen, right? And so when you don't have a will, though, it makes it a little bit more complicated because one, the court has to figure out who's the family, right? What evidence do you have that you're family? Is there anybody else? And then who's basically first in line?
Okay.
So the states, each state has their sort of way that they, I guess, hierarchy of how they distribute the assets. So they'll say if you're married, then it's going to be your spouse. If you are married and with children, it'll be your spouse and your children, right? And some states say just your spouse, some states say your spouse and your children. If you don't have a spouse, then it's your children. And then if you have no spouse, no children, then it's typically going to be your parents,
Okay.
right? So in his case,
He was married, wasn't he?
he was married, yeah.
Okay.
In his case, he was married, and then there was a situation where there was like some sort of a dispute between the parents and the spouse, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so,
I think
yeah.
so. At some point down the line, right? So in his case, he was married, so it was supposed to be his wife to get everything. But he was sort of newly married. I think they kind of got married during the past couple of years where he was ill. So that was sort of the thing. Should his parents get? Should his wife get? You know, and things like that. Now, I also saw that he may have had a trust. And so the things that they were kind of arguing over were things that were not in his trust. I don't know that that's to be true because I haven't really seen a lot about it. But from what we know, a bulk of his estate did go through probate, and then his, I believe that his wife and his parents ended up sharing the estate, right? Yeah. And so part of it was that probably like almost $1 million bond had to be posted for his estate. So I think, yeah. So because his estate was probably like around $3 million or $4 million, about $1 million bond had to be posted. And what a bond is basically states, it's like an insurance policy. So the courts are like, okay, you're gonna be over this estate and there's all this money in this estate. We wanna make sure that if something happens, that the loved ones could be made whole. Like whoever's in charge runs off with the money, there needs to be something to secure that. So that's what the bond is for. It's almost like bail bonds.
That's when I hear bond, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, everybody knows what I say. It's almost like bail bonds. They're like, oh, okay.
That's when we said bond, I'm like, oh, that's what I'm thinking.
So for people who don't have money, that could be a real problem. You know what I'm saying? Like to even get over that hurdle to even get access to the assets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because even his estate was in probate for a while, right?
Yeah.
Like a year.
Yeah, it was at least a year. And that's not long.
Oh.
That's not long. So we had, what's this guy named? James Brown's estate was like 15 years.
I remember that.
Yeah, Prince's estate was like probably like 6 or 7 years. You know, like these.
But wasn't Prince's estate controversial because he had a will?
No, he had nothing.
Oh, I thought he had a will.
No, it was even more controversial because his survivors were his half siblings who he was rumored to be estranged from some or most of them. So they had to figure out who are your your relatives, and then what should they get.
Wow. See that, and that's where it gets tricky, right?
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky.
Especially our community, because we never, especially when we're married, because we always think that, oh, the spouse will get it.
Yeah.
It automatically go to the spouse. But like you said, if you have estranged family members that they feel that they should be entitled, then that's when everything is pretty jammed up.
Yeah. And people can, even if they're not entitled, they can prolong the process just by by, arguing with the court. You know what I'm saying? Wow. So just by saying, hey, I have an objection to this. This is a type of situation. This is something that I want to raise. Maybe there was a will and it was lost, or somebody's holding up the will, or there's fraud going on. Like, they could raise all types of things. Mm-hmm. And when they do that, the court has to take it into consideration, and it drags out the process.
Wow. Mm-hmm.